Hello, hello. How are we? The world is kind of wild, isn't it? So let's be a little bit more intentional when it comes to how we're going to navigate it. Not just literally, but figuratively as well. As we start to near summer and the idea of travel starts to come into your sphere, I'm also noticing with a lot of my clients, they're questioning if they should move, if they should stay, if they should go. And it just felt timely to devote an episode around astrocartography and the energetics of movement and really understanding our place in the world. So if you have been curious about the astrocartography tool, maybe you've never even heard of it before, maybe you want to better understand the geography of our world as it connects to astrology, or maybe you're just in this in-between space where you're really like, do I stay? Do I go? How do I know where to go from here? Let's cover all of it.
Danielle, Mercury, it's time for the show. Danielle, welcome to the show. Danielle, Mercury, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
All right, let's go ahead and connect with the energetics and the essentials of astrocartography, and then we will go from there. So what is astrocartography? Essentially, it's a branch of astrology. Typically, it's used in Western astrology, and it explores the relationship between your birth chart and the surface of our Earth. Okay, so that's kind of the entry level. There is definitely more ways to go into the energetics of what's going on in the Earth, but in its essence, entry point, the relationship of you and the Earth's surface. Okay. Essentially, what we're doing is we are taking your birth chart. We're taking the first moment that you took your breath to land here on Earth. And when you landed here on Earth, what we are doing is we are projecting the planets down onto our planet so that we can get a map of how they correlate with the geography of this Earth. So the way that I like to describe it is this. When you're born, right, the moment that you take your first breath, which again, I say this all the time, the moment you took your first breath was the moment you were supposed to take your first breath. I don't care if you were a C-section. I don't care if you were late. I don't care if you were premature. You were exactly on time. Okay? So the moment that you take your first breath, we literally look up at the solar system. We look up at the planetary sky and we look to see, okay, where are they positioned right now in relationship to our Earth? Further, if we were to place the zodiac wheel underneath those planets, and almost imagine that the zodiac wheel becomes a game board, how are the planets then positioned on this game board, which then becomes your birth chart? Okay? So we have your birth chart that has the planets in the zodiac positions, making different aspects to each other and all that yummy stuff. And then we pull it down over the globe so that now we have this really beautiful way to see exactly where the celestial elements of your chart relate to our environment. And the way that I like to also describe it is almost as if we were to take the planets and turn them into these little tiny balloons, and then we want to see where they would land on your map. So that's the essence of it. It is a branch of astrology that looks at the geography based on your birth chart. Okay. So then when you are looking at it, and you can look at it for free, there's two resources. There's astro.com, which is my preference. I like to use the paid version. There is a free version. The paid version is $13 a year, which I think is very much worth it because you can store more profiles. There's no ads, all that good stuff. Astro-Seek, I believe, is free. I don't know if they have a paid version. So once you set up your account with either of those, You're going to, of course, input your birth time, location, all those things. If you do not know your time, now here's the thing. Astrocartography really leans on the rising sign and where the sun was along the ascendant when you were born. This changes every 2 hours. So if you don't know your time, it is going to affect your mapping, but there's a way around it, because you can still look at the energetics of that day and still use that as intel to help you understand your place in this world and how to use your map accordingly. So what you're going to do, if you don't know your time, you check with your parents, you can't find your birth certificate, you called the hospital, they don't have the records, you're going to put 12 p.m. Okay, 12 noon is universal time in astrology. So that's what we work with if there's no time available. Okay, so you're going to input that information. If you're on a site like astro.com, you're going to scroll down to the travel section. You're going to pull up your map. So once you pull up your map, you're going to see lots of lines, lots of different colors, and circles. Okay, once you look at all that, you're going to be like, whoa, what is this? It's so cool. One of the things I need to do, like for real, I need to get mine like blown up and frame it for my office. I feel like that would be such a cool feature, and why I haven't done that yet, that's on me. So I want us to hold me accountable to getting my astro map framed. So once you see this giant map with all the lines and the bubbles, circles, etc., you're gonna be like, what is this? It's so cool. Let's break it down. So the first circle that you're probably gonna hone in on is where you were born. So where you were born is going to be a red circle with a cross. That was your location where you took your first breath. Then you're going to start to see other circles, all different colors: orange, green, black, purple, you name it. Those are called the zenith points. Now the zenith points are, if that planet dropped down like a balloon, it is that concentrated energy of where the planet is most directionally aligned with the earth, and it's going to have the most impact, the most energy. Okay, so that is known as your zenith point. So if you see a blue, and then you got to double check, but let's say like a dark blue bubble, and it is hovering over Mexico City, then that means that is where your moon was, because dark blue in astro.com. And you can actually get, if you look in the show notes, I have a free guide that breaks down all the lines and the colors for you. It's kind of like your key code to astrocartography. It's totally free. The link is in my show notes if you want to get that. So that way you can even like follow along with me when you listen, because I break down all the colors and the planets in this guide and just make it really easy to like get started per se. So anyway, all that to say, let's say you find out, okay, this dark blue circle is over Mexico City. Well, the dark blue circle is your moon. So that means the moon was literally over Mexico City when you were born. Well, whatever the moon happens to represent, which we'll get into, those qualities are going to be most amplified over Mexico City. And you better believe if the moon is in the same sign that it was in when you were born, when you go to Mexico City, you're going to feel that influence very deeply. It's pretty cool. I'll talk about my experiences with my zenith line. So those are your zenith points, okay? That's that's where the planet lives. That's its home. That's its hub. That's where it belonged the moment you took your first breath. Now you might say, hey, I'm looking at some of these bubbles and they're in the Pacific Ocean, or they're up in Russia, or they're in places I would never go, or they just seem like they're in the middle of nowhere. That is okay. That's just where they happen to land, right? That's why we have the lines. So the planetary lines, also known as key lines, they're displaying or representing the energy of the planet. Okay, so that moon that was, let's say, over Mexico City, there are going to be key lines that stem from it. And those lines represent the moon wherever else they go on your map. So that may curve up towards let's say it curves up northeast, right? So it comes up through Mexico City and then kind of makes its way into Texas and then continues its way up through Tennessee, and before you know it, it's up and out through Lake Michigan. So that means that whole trail would be your moon line, right? And anywhere along that tracking device represents the qualities of the moon for you, and you'll feel it in those locations. Okay, it's going to feel more influential. So that's how you want to kind of get started, is look to see where your zenith parts are. Notice if they happen to apply in any way. Now, when you're looking at astro.com or you're looking at Astro-Seek, again, I really encourage you to download the guide. You'll see at the top of your map little symbols, and the symbols will be like a circle with a dot in the middle, a moon. You'll see the symbols for Jupiter, Saturn, all of the planets, Neptune, the whole gang. Okay, so based on that, based on the planetary symbol and the color that it's in, that's going to help you see where they are throughout your map. Now, if you click on a location, it will tell you also. So if I go into either of those sites and I click on, let's say, Dallas, it most likely, based on our example, will say this is your moon line. Okay, so that way, that's another way you can tell too. And then it will give you some intel around that. I'm not a huge fan of the intel that it gives, but I'm also an astrologer, so I kind of use my own intuition and my knowledge to interpret things, and that's why people prefer to book sessions with me as opposed to just using the site to kind of find the answers. But it's definitely a resource for sure. So once you kind of start to see this, you start to see, okay, there's a framework at play here. It's not as scary as maybe I thought it was going to be. And then you get to play, to enjoy the food. So if someone is really like torn about where to live and one of the options is the sun line, I say go for it. I actually had the opportunity when I was in Portugal to go be on my sun's zenith, and that was incredible. I was literally like just north of the bubble of the sun zenith, and I had been on my sun line in the United States because it's in Arizona, Utah, and goes up through Wyoming, and that was really incredible. I had so many amazing experiences where I just felt like I came home to myself, especially in Utah. Actually, I spent some time in Zion, and I basically for 5 weeks just like hung out, hiked, ate, like cooked for myself, which I normally like don't do. Like I didn't go out to eat at all because a lot of the restaurants in Zion are very touristy, and the closest like town, like a suburban town, if you will, was like 45 minutes. So I'm like, I'm not driving 45 minutes to go to like a restaurant. That just didn't really appeal to me. I mean, there were a couple gems. There was like two coffee shops that were good. I want to say one was called like Canyon Coffee, and then there was another cafe that was like a Mexican place that was a little bit further down that was good. But my townhouse was actually across the street from this little tiny organic grocer, so I was very content just making my own food, hiking by day, getting a good night's sleep, working with clients. Like I had such a great experience, and I felt like it gave me this really nice boost and renewal, if you will. But anyway, experiencing it in Portugal was like a whole nother level of getting clear on who I am, what I want, what I'm looking for, and how to kind of clear any self-judgment or things that I had been harboring. So I really enjoyed that. Now I'm on my moon line in Austin. And the moon line is, who are you at night, right? It's more of your emotions. It's family and friends, where you might want to settle down, raise a family. It could be a second home where you retire. So the moon line is really going to be a space where you get to receive support. And I'm really itching to go to Spain because Spain is actually my moon zenith. So I'm a Leo sun, Leo moon. So that means a lot of the times my sun and my moon lines are going to be near each other for that reason. Because when I was born, since the sun and the moon were both in Leo, you're going to find this on your map. If you have a lot of similar signs, like let's say when you were born, your Mercury and Jupiter were both in Virgo. Well, you're going to see that throughout your map, your Mercury and Jupiter are going to be hanging out a lot. And the zenith points may even cross over, which amplifies the energy that much more. So I really want to get over to Spain because, well, I have been to Spain, but over near like Barcelona, because that is my moon zenith point, which I think will be groovy. So then there's Mercury, and your Mercury line is your mind, your communication. It's about learning, focus, meeting like-minded people. I find too that Mercury connects us to our past lives, our Akashic records, things of that nature. So it's a good place to, go back to school. I've worked with a lot of high schoolers about where to go to college, and usually they don't care so much about what the best line to study on is. They're like, where am I going to fall in love? Where am I going to have a good time, right? And I'm like, well, here's your Mercury where you're, learn, study, and then you can do whatever you want and live wherever you want, right? So Mercury is known for that. Venus line. So I lived on my Venus line in South Carolina in Greenville. That was really interesting because I really had to redefine the relationship with myself and how I saw myself. It also brought up, I'm going to be completely honest, some like abandonment wounds, the feeling of needing to be chosen. I was in a relationship where I lost myself in a lot of ways, which I wasn't anticipating, right? I was like, I'm moving to my Venus line because Venus represents love, creation, partnership. And I got the shadow, which is something that can happen with this as well. So when we're looking at our lines, we also have to be looking at, okay, here are the clear indicators of how this is going to work well for me. And here's also, because everything has light and dark, here's areas where there might be a shadow casted. And that's exactly what happened to me because I went in so ready for partnership. That was like my number one priority. I was like, I want to meet someone. I'm ready to fall in love. And I fell into some darkness with that because there were some things that I really needed to clear up in that department. And it was a longer journey than I wanted it to be. But coming out the other side of that relationship and those dynamics, I healed and uncovered things that I never would have. And I probably would have just carried them with me into the next relationship or here in Austin. So that's something that we definitely want to be understanding of. So Venus line also, though, if you're not looking for partnership or family or things of that nature, your Venus line can also be great for creativity, for starting fresh, building something new. So that there's like a magnetism. What I love about whenever I'm on my Venus line is it's also St. Pete for me, Asheville, Miami. Like I feel so fresh and goddessy, and I feel like people open doors for me, and it's just really like easy and fun and flirty in that way. So that's the Venus vibe. And then there's Mars. So Mars is our line of energy, movement. It's a great place for work, to get things going. If you're running a startup, like bring it to your Mars line, right? The one thing that we want to be mindful of with the Mars line is burnout, working too much, right? We want to make sure we're bringing that balance. So there's our Jupiter line. Jupiter is a line of prosperity, expansion. It's a line where you can take a risk, where you can invest in something new. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to surprise you. It's meant to open you up in really cool new ways. We do want to watch out for overindulgence or greed. And also too with Jupiter line, I find that I enjoy it. Like one of the places I like to go, that's my Jupiter line, is New Orleans. I have no interest in living in New Orleans, but I love going for the very Jupiter reasons. Like I love going because it just feels like a cultural shift. I feel like I'm transported to another world. The food is different and unique. The people are just so friendly and fascinating. There's history, there's witchery, there's just like this magnetism for me that makes me just feel like, oh, I just freaking love this. I feel so much more expansive. I feel so much more like my cup is filled and now I want to go, right? So it's like that also can be how you feel with certain lines as well. It's like you're kind of just going and transporting yourself there to kind of feed on the line and then you bop back out. So then there's Saturn. Saturn, I was born on my Saturn line. So look to see if you were born on a line, because honestly, I really believe that Saturn was the planet that I had to learn in this life. 100%. Like it kicks my ass. If any planet, I'm like, phew, I came here to learn Saturn, that's for sure. And what's interesting, so Saturn is, Saturn governs Capricorn. So I was born on my Saturn line. Now my Saturn's in Libra, which is my 4th house, home, family, foundation. Born on my Saturn line while my mom was having her Saturn return. My mom is a Capricorn Sun, Capricorn Moon. She's also a Saturn Libra like me. And going through Saturn return, right? And we were in between homes. Because I was actually to the world, they said I was late. But for me, I was right on time, because if I wasn't born when I was not going to be a Leo Sun Moon rising, and I wasn't going to be born the day after Lionsgate. So I knew what I was up to. But because of that, and the timing of things, my parents were in between homes. We were living in Seattle, but they already had a place set up in Portland. They had to be out of their Seattle place by August 1st. So they were like waiting around, and my mom didn't want to leave like the hospital, the energetics of Seattle. So they were literally just waiting around for me to be born. And then I still kind of like hung around in a hotel for a few days until my mom felt comfortable to go to Portland. And even though it's not that far, I don't know. I don't really understand the logistics, but it is what it is. But it is interesting that I was born on my Saturn line, which runs through my dynamics of home and family and foundation. And if you know me, you know Danielle moves around a lot. And I just feel like I'm always... And just the way that Saturn moves through my chart in general, it always is like kind of got a hold on me. But what's interesting is, personally, I do think it's starting to turn around. And what's interesting too is like I'm starting to leverage Saturn in my 4th house in ways where teaching things like this, right? Like how astrocartography affects you and your home and your lifestyle. And then also I built a company called Triple Leo House, which is all about home energetics and attunement. You know, I've been nomadic 3 times. I've moved around a lot. I've house sat and lived in so many homes and spaces. I understand energetics of the home better than most people. Like I can walk into your space and I can call out what's going on, what's wrong. I can listen and hear in between the walls. Like it's a thing. And I didn't really realize, like it's always been a thing for me, but I just never really like called it out as part of what I do professionally until recently. And so I feel like that's me taking ownership of my Saturn, right? Anyway, Saturn is typically a place where there's going to be a lot around the rules, family karma, doing the right thing. It's always going to kind of show you how to be the hero. And if you are living on your Saturn line, you want to have boundaries for sure. And you want to make sure that you don't overload yourself, overwhelm yourself, overpace yourself, take on more than you can handle. Really important. And if you're visiting your Saturn, just don't overbook your schedule, is what I will say. Okay. Other lines that we want to lean into, Pluto. Pluto is our line of taking a leap of faith, getting us out of our comfort zone. That's another line I don't really love people to live on, because it's always like, you can do it, and like pushes you off the cliff. And you're like, what the fuck, right? And then like you make your way back up and you're like, what was that all about? And it was like, aren't you proud of yourself? And you're like, I guess. And they're like, that's what that was all about. And you're like, oh. So if you don't want to like keep learning lessons like you're the Karate Kid, Pluto line may not be for you. But once again, if you have to live there, boundaries, right? That's a huge piece of it. Another line is our Neptune. Neptune is spirituality, dreaminess. Neptune's a great place to go on a retreat, take a vacation, lead a retreat. Maybe even your healer lives on your Neptune line. So one of the things too, it's really funny, the dude I was in the relationship with when I was on my Venus line, so it was my Venus line, it was his Neptune line. I'm like, no wonder it wasn't grounded in reality. So that's one thing we have to watch out for when you're living on your Neptune line. You may not feel grounded, rooted. You may be a little bit too up there. You may be, and this guy wasn't like this, but you may be more like I could see someone joining a cult on their Neptune line, right? Like that kind of thing. So those are things you want to be mindful of. But another thing, like your lines can also come to you. So you could be working with, a coach, or you could be working with a psychiatrist virtually, and then you look up and you're like, oh, this psychiatrist lives in Boston, and that's my Neptune line. Oh, how about that? Right? Like they're helping you connect to the healing, spiritual, higher self piece of things. So we love that. Uranus is our line of anxiety, change, adaptability. It could be a good place to move after a big life change. Maybe you just went through a divorce. Maybe you had to sell your home. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you're, just in a space where you're like, I'm ready for change. Uranus line, 100%. But you do have to be mindful because it's saying, hey, you said you came here for change. So if you try to revert to your old habits, if you try to go back to your old lifestyle, if you try to pull in your past too much, it's going to call you out on that. So that's definitely something that I would want you to be mindful of if going that way. And then there's also the nodes. So with the nodals, they deal with your north and south node. So those lines are going to be around purpose, undoing things that you came here to learn, right? So it's going to be kind of this dance between lessons and fulfillment, purpose and alignment, and just kind of moving and grooving back and forth in this way. And then there's also Chiron, which is our wounded healer. So Chiron is an asteroid. It's actually not a planet. And that's a place where it holds a lot of healing for you, but it's also a place where you can go back and be the healer as well. So all these lines represent different qualities, right? Like they all have different energetics. And they all may come through at different places and spaces in your life in one way or another, which is always really, really interesting, right? And I really take them into consideration when I'm planning a trip, when I'm planning a retreat, when I may be planning to move. And, like I said earlier, a lot of people have been, on my calls lately, whether it's astrocartography or just a general intuitive reading, they've been asking me, like, I feel like I'm supposed to move. And what I'm finding is most people aren't actually needing to move. Some, yes. But most people, you just need to travel. You just need to change up your routine. You're feeling stuck, and you think that the antidote to feeling stuck is to move your life and go on a new adventure. But honestly, that's probably a disservice for many of you because moving is a lot of work. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of taking up your time. It's distracting. It's all over the place. It's logistical. And so if you really feel called to get out of town, if there's a real reason, maybe you are, you got to have a relationship. Maybe, where you lived, you don't have family there anymore. There may be nothing there for you anymore. And that's definitely something to look at. But if you're just feeling like I'm stagnant, I'm a little bored, I'm feeling itchy, let me just change it up and just, kind of start to romanticize the idea of a new life like it's a Hallmark movie, watch yourself. Because what you might really need, take that money, take that few $1,000s that you were going to spend for movers, and also not to mention the time that you're investing in packing and unpacking and, security deposit and this and that, new furniture, whatever it may be, and go on a trip and see what that does for you. See how you feel when you get back also. That's one of my favorite things. When I go on a trip, and especially if I'm flying, when it's flying back into my airport, how do I feel? Does it feel like I'm landing in the right spot? That's a telltale sign that you're home. Now, maybe you don't need to take a huge big trip because you're like, okay, I spent $2,000 on a big trip and I realize I really do want to move and now I don't have that $2,000 to move. Maybe you just go an hour away. Go to a town you've never been to before. Maybe you literally check out a farmer's market in another area 15 minutes away. Instead of going to the one that you typically go to every Saturday morning, go to the town over. Do little things like that feel intentional, that feel like you're doing something different, and see what that starts to do for you. Because a lot of times it's not that we need to move. We just need to experience something different. And so how can you do that, right? So play around with those things. Mini trips, day trips, literally going the town over, and see if that makes an impact. And then if you're still like, no, I want to move, then, move. I'm not going to stop you. But I just want people to be more mindful because I just feel right now what's going on is we're feeling stuck. We're feeling overwhelmed. We're tired of looking at our phones, but we can't stop looking at our phones. We're consuming a lot of data. We don't know what to do with it all. So there's this feeling of I got to move. I got to go. But it's like, no, move, go. But go on a retreat with Danielle or do the things that I was sharing about. So what if you're looking at your map and you're like, there's nothing there. There's no lines. What do I do? So I call that a neutral territory. So it's lacking any kind of deep planetary pulse or influence. So those spaces are kind of make it your own. You know, it's kind of like whatever you're feeling there is whatever it is. You do want to watch out for being like too into the environment or too into the influence of the environment. You might be a little bit impressionable in neutral spaces, but most of the time I find that when people are in neutral space, especially if they're like born in one, they're like, yeah, I'm kind of over it, or like I kind of felt like I was the outsider or I was the different one. So but I just say like go and make it your own, right? And then I'm not going to go too deep into this, and this is actually, I have a course called the Astrocartography method, and we cover it there. We go deeper into aspects and also parents. Aspects and parents start to look at the deeper relationships within the lines, and also like kind of the hidden lines in your chart. I teach you how to find them, or you can book a session with me and we find them that way too. So that's definitely something to reference as well. And then one other thing that I would note, you might see in your chart, like, okay, Danielle, I see you, I see all this. What about, I'm seeing like IC and MC, and like, what does that stuff mean, right? DC, AC. So that's showing you AC is the ascendant, IC is the fourth house, home, DC is relationships, MC is midheaven. So when you see, like, for example, I'm on my moon line AC. So that means I'm on my moon line affecting my ascendant. My ascendant is my first house, my rising sign. So that's the influence right there. Let's say you realize, okay, I am on my, what do we want to be on? I'm on my Mercury MC line. Okay, cool. So that means it's going to be your Mercury line, and the emphasis, the theme is going to be more around your midheaven, which is career, public persona, how you want to be seen in a more higher perspective. DC is relationships, and then, like I said, IC is home. So, like, for example, let's say you find your, like, the perfect location for you, like, it feels like it's checking all your boxes, and then you see it's your sun line, IC, boom, go, golden, right? Good stuff. And then also too, like, again, like, if you can't get to a place, like, explore it. Like, a lot of times I'll do sessions with individuals and they'll be like, I'm always fascinated by Asian culture, and like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to get there. And then we see that, you know, there's certain planetary influences in Thailand or in Japan. And it's like, okay, well, you'll get there. So let's hold space that there will be a day you get to go visit. But in the meantime, how can you embrace the environment? How can you bring in the culture? How can you maybe, like, you take a cooking class, or maybe you learn more about certain traditions, things like that, right? Where you get to bring the energetics of a place to you. So I think that's another really, like, important, valuable way as well. And the more that you explore your map, the more things kind of start to click and you connect the dots. And then the more, like, you start to intuitively understand about your maps as well. Like, there's so much to learn about it. And again, we cover this in my course, Astrocartography method. And I even have, hold on, I need some water. I even have a certification, so if you want to start reading for others, because I'm going to be honest with you, there's not many people that do this professionally, and there's, like, I'm really good at it, and I know a lot, and I think there's a lot of people that just literally touch the surface, or just literally take you to astro.com and regurgitate what you kind of already found there, you know? Like, I remember when I first found out about astrocartography, I didn't really know much about it, even though I had been studying astrology for so long, but times were different a decade ago, which sounds wild to say. But the resources for astrology just weren't there. And I mean, like I said, I've been studying it since I was 4 years old. So, and I was born in 83. So I've been studying it since like 87. And there's books and teachings and whatnot, but like not like now, right? Anyway, all to say, 2015, someone told me about it. And I found an astrologer that did it, and she made me a report. Like, I think I paid like $50, and I got like a PDF. And I remember being a little bit turned off because I was in LA, which was my Saturn line, and the way she painted it, I was like, fuck. I was like, I don't know how I feel about astrocartography. But then it just kept calling to me, and I just kept realizing the importance and the value. And I, as someone that moves a lot, travels a lot, has been nomadic, it kind of makes sense for me to deliver this tool as an extension of what I do. You know, at the end of the day, I like to read energy. So if I can read the energy of your map to help you have a better understanding of how to navigate forward, amazing. So, okay, I'm going to leave you with that. Go check out your map. Go see where your zenith points are. Go notice if any lines stand out to you. Definitely download the free guide because it's just going to make it a little bit easier for you to connect the dots. And then if you're interested in taking it further, check out the astrocartography method. I have it in 2 levels. So level 1 is like the essentials, the foundations. I really hold your hand and take you through everything. The astrology, the mapping, kind of all the good stuff so that like by the end, like you understand astrocartography, you have a handle on it. And then level 2 is when we get like deeper. We go into the past life connections, we go into parens, we go into relocation astrology, we go into how to read for others. We also move into grid work where we're working with the ley lines and the grids underneath the system. So it's pretty cool. So if you've been feeling called to really take it to the next level, then you want to get level 2 for sure, and then have that certification included as well. So those are the things. Freaking adore you. Share this with someone else who might find it helpful, and download that guide, okay?